Okay, this is Revelation at Daybreak. It is a gum bichromate print, and I will get into that technique momentarily. But first I want to talk about the meaning behind it. I want to start with my aversion to pink. I have a real problem with pink because it's very girly, and you know, the connotation with pink is that pink is for girls, blue is for boys, and anyway, pink doesn't look good on me, so I have an aversion to it. But what I really wanted to do here was lean into it. I wanted to use the interpretation of pink in another way. I wanted to use its girly implications in a way that reversed it, kind of reversed that meaning. So I used this spray of flowers, and then on top of that spray of flowers, I put an X-ray of a pelvis. Happens to be my pelvis, which I manipulated just a little bit. So what I was thinking about was, how can I use that sense of femininity and reverse it? Have you ever woken up in the morning, ladies, and realized that there were some choices made for you, or you made some poor choices and you just needed to leave? This is what I was thinking about when I created this piece, that sometimes revelation at daybreak may mean a realization that something has happened to you, or that you've made a poor choice and allowed something to happen to you. And I wanted to place this kind of malevolence in the midst of this spray of flowers indicating this beauty, because it's not so beautiful. Kind of a metaphor for an enlightenment or a realization that something bad has happened, and there needs to be some steps taken in order to mitigate that horror that may have happened the night before. So that's kind of the meaning of this work. It's a gum bichromate print. I've been working with X-rays and MRIs now for a few years, and so I've taken it a little further with this technique. Gum bichromate is about a 150-year-old photographic method. And I've updated it. You create negatives in the computer, and then it's a contact print. There are 3 negatives involved in this particular print. There are 4 colors, 3 negatives. So I used one of the negatives twice by moving it, and then another negative. So there are 2 negatives for the flowers, and then 1 negative for the pelvis. It's a mixture of watercolor and gum arabic in a stock solution, and then that stock solution is then diluted again, depending on what effect you want, with gum arabic, and then that solution is mixed 1-to-1 with potassium dichromate. And potassium dichromate is the photosensitive material. It's very slow. It's a very slow process. You can do it in room light, and then and each negative is a different color. So I started with the flowers. I think I started with the pink flowers, and so you mix up the solution, you brush it onto the paper. This is watercolor paper. Brush it onto the paper, dry it, put the negative on top of it, weight it down. I have an easel for that. Put it under some lights, and I'm using aquarium and plant lights for this, and then expose it for a certain amount of time. Then that comes out, goes into the water, the paper goes into the water, the potassium dichromate lifts off after about 5–10 minutes, and then it goes into water, and it just sits there for about 45 minutes to an hour. Everything that doesn't belong there washes away. It's very delicate. It's extremely delicate until it dries. Once it dries, it's archival. So you could, which I might have done with the pelvis, go in there with a brush and kind of brush away some areas that you may not want, and then just leave it in the bath. If you agitate it, you're finished. So you just have to, being a photographer, I'm used to being in the dark room and agitating. You can't do that. You've got to walk away. So I think, yes, the pink and the purple were from the same negative, different times. So the pink was exposed first. Then the purple, I just kind of jogged the negative over a little bit and exposed the purple. And the red is an entirely different negative to begin with. And then that all dried, and then the pelvis went on. So that's the technique. It takes quite a while. I'm doing one right now. I'm using 4 negatives. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'll have 4 layers. I can build up the colors. If I'm not satisfied with one of the colors, if it's not deep enough, I could print that again. So a gum print could have 9, 10 layers, 11 layers. It's not easy. One false move and you have to start all over again. So that's the technique. Questions? Questions about the meaning, the technique, anything? I don't think that was 10 minutes, but okay. And nothing fell. Last year I was in the middle of the talk,
right.
painting fell. So, okay.
Thank you, Frani.
Thank you.